It's a gauntlet coming up for Michigan State basketball to end the season, but how can our Spartans still win the Big Ten title? We're going to talk about that and a little bit of football, too, with the one, the only Stephen Brooks. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On Spartans right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We do this 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, do whatever really makes you happy. And how could you not be happy at a time like this if you're a Michigan State fan? 2 great victories for our Spartan dogs on the hardwood. And hey, we're going to talk a little bit about football too, because it's been kind of neglected here because, well, kind of in a dead period with football, and basketball has just been that much fun. But we're going to do it all with the one, the only Stephen Brooks, 24/7 Sports. Stephen, in the house of the Breslin last night, give me a vibe check, man. Is this program just in the best spot you've seen in years? Is it just that easy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you talk about the program, for sure. I mean, and the vibes, absolutely. I mean, some of those moments, some of these runs that they've had, and then of course Cohen Carr is spurting a lot of this stuff. Or Jace Richardson, obviously has become a fan favorite. Like, yeah, times are good. At the height of the Oregon game, I was telling people that sounded like a pre-COVID crowd, and
right.
It's just such a good marker, in a lot of ways, societally. But even for MSU basketball, I mean, there's a hard line there of where the program was before COVID and where things have been after. So, probably the loudest environment for that game that I've heard since. It's been consistently good. They've consistently showed up. I just get a sense that that folks have really fallen in love with this team, and I think Absolutely. They are a likable team. I think they have good guys who are likable guys. They obviously have exciting players that we've talked about. They've obviously restored the standard. So all that put together, I just feel like there's a connection between the team and the fan base that's maybe been lacking a little bit for a while. Because last year was like strained. I mean, the preseason expectations, the failure to live up to them basically right away and never really come close. There's always this anxiety of like, are they ever going to click? Is it ever going to come together? And, guys have been around long enough where I think with some fans, they've worn out their welcome. I don't think I know, and you can speak to that or whatever. But so there's fresh faces. It's a different style, all that stuff. So, and they're winning. That's the biggest thing. If these guys were 500 in the Big Ten, vibes wouldn't be that high. But, a lot's going right now, and it feels like it used to feel for a lot of ways, in a lot of ways, I should say.
And one of those ways is just the toughness too. I mean, sure, we celebrate every single win here, but it's just how they've done it. Like, they had a small deficit in the first half against Purdue. Obviously, it wasn't massive, but this team gets tough. They don't wilt when things don't go their way early on in a game. And you could just point to 2 games back against Illinois, down 16 on the road. And I'm not, going to outright say like, oh, the teams of the past were mentally weak, but teams of the past, they get down 16 points in Champaign. They're losing that game by 36, I think. Like, they're certainly not walking away with a double-digit victory. I mean, this team is just built differently. We've talked about it, what it means on the court with their defense, their rebounding, their running, but just the mentality, it is a very lovable team because this is the Tom Izzo Michigan State teams that we've kind of grown up to love here. Now, let's see if they could hang a banner here because they are in position to do good things. It will be a tough finish. Like we've talked about, like every other media site has talked about, how hard of a road this is to end for Michigan State here. They got at Michigan, at Maryland. Right now, the computers say that you will be underdogs by about 4 points in both of those games. And then to end the season, well, home against Wisconsin team that just has forgotten how to lose. You're at Iowa, which any road game in the Big Ten is tough. And then home against that, of course, good Michigan team that gives you tough matchups. But how can this team still do it with a tough schedule? I think it's as easy as that defense. Of course, we always talk about you never know who the guy's going to be on offense. It could be anyone's night, but it could be, just an okay day on offense. This team defensively, which, by the way, top 15 in the nation in defensive efficiency, they've shown, especially recently, that they could do it. They've held Purdue to under 70 points for the first time in 8 games, and also they just held Illinois to under 70 points for the first time in 16 games for the Fighting Illini. Those are 2 well-oiled machines. Michigan State has done it. You could look at all sorts of metrics and numbers, and many of them are going to tell you, this team does match what you see on the court. They are tenacious, especially around the perimeter. If there's a roadmap to do it, quite simply put, I think it is that defense. Does that go without saying, Steven, or is there something else that you like about this team as we go into the last 5 games here?
No, I like it, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but what you were saying, like this team hasn't been blown out this year. Think about that. You know, when you talk about previous teams and everything, yeah, they've lost. You know, Indiana, ugly day, bad game, all that. You know, USC, bad start, and UCLA, you could have still won that, but like they haven't been just blown off the court. And in a lot of these games, Purdue included, Illinois included, even Indiana that they lost. You know, maybe not Indiana actually, I should say, but definitely Illinois and Purdue, like. They just hung around long enough to find their footing, and then the game. You know, it's like they don't. It's a hard team to blow out, I think, because there is some resolve and there's so many pieces. And so, to your point, I look at it like, why can they win the Big Ten? And to me, it's because my fellow millennial, that grew up on Dragon Ball Z will get this, but they're not even in their final form yet, right? Like. I still look at this roster, and I think there's a lot of guys. I even to Jace Richardson, I think has another level in him.
Gotcha.
Kopitar, absolutely growing by the minute, by the day, all season long, and continuing on that arc. Here's one for you. What if Xavier Booker pops off, for a 15.7 rebound type of game all of a sudden?
Please do.
And that would be an outlier. But what if he gets to some sort of regular 8-4 type of situation, down the stretch? That changes you. Shimon Zapala, I think, has another thing to him maybe. Jackson Kohler obviously has more to his game. And Jeremy Fears has been in a rut lately. So I don't think anybody outside of probably Jaden Akins and Frankie Fiddler, maybe Zapala, I guess, as well. But there's very few guys I feel like that are pretty much are what they are. Otherwise, most of this rotation has at least another level or multiple to get to, I think. And we're getting late in the season, and that's unrealistic, I think, for everybody to take these quantum leaps in 2 to 3 weeks or something. But I'm really not talking quantum leaps because a lot of this growth has been occurring all season long. So that's where I look at it. Is just I think individually guys are still far from their ceilings in a lot of cases. So what type of ground can be made up there? And then just what they've been all season. And Matt Painter talked about this last night. I asked Ben Johnson about it when they came to Breslin. Like, it's a hard team to scout when – Jaden Akins looks like, supposedly your lead dog on paper, but when Cohen can come off the bench and be like a 12-8 guy or something on a given day, or Jackson can go for 23, as a major outlier, like it's a hard team to really get your hands around as the opposing coach, because it's like you just can't pour A+ material into 10 guys, So there's going to be some cracks there, and MSU has the bodies to sort of emerge through those cracks and do some damage. We've seen it all year long. So I just think that's a really difficult dynamic. Now, when they get into hypothetically an Elite 8 game or something, it's a half-court grinder, and you need just a dude for the last 2 minutes to take you home, that could be an issue. Absolutely could. But you probably got there, with those swarming numbers, too many different counters type of strategy that we've been seeing all year. So I think that's still what it is for me is there's just so much. There's some. We know what this team is, but there's still some wild cards on any given night.
Attention Locked On Spartans fans, the future of college sports is here, and it is transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes they love. And now, with Roy, you get to be part of the change and support Spartan athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much to contribute, and receive exclusive content from the athletes that you back. And the best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app is giving fans control. No more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Spartan athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite Spartan players. Yeah, like we do know what this team's kryptonite is at this point. I mean, it is the three-point shooting, for example. And like I'm getting very like Iowa State last year vibes off this team. And I'm not expecting everyone to watch all 30 games that happened in Ames last year, but that was a team that was nasty defensively, but they were not good at shooting the three-point ball. And that's what eventually undid them in the tournament. We all know the story there, but what teams like this can do, just like you said, Steven, like they can keep every game close, and they have kept every game close up until this point. So this is why I think, you know what, the roadmap might be a little more clear than we think. I'm not going all the way and saying that like, oh, I guarantee a conference title. I think they will win a conference title, but you look at the strength of the 4 teams remaining over these last 5 games. All 4 of these teams are in the top 30 of offensive efficiency. Like, you're going to go up against their strengths with your strengths too. Can you neutralize what they have? Can you negate what they can do? I don't see reason to believe that you can't with 3 of those teams. The one that I'm worried about is, of course, we're facing this Friday and then to end the season, Michigan, just because of, well, they're not built around the perimeter per se. They're more of a front court loaded team. But that's a discussion that we're going to have ongoing here to end the week.
Schedules will play into it. You know, I think MSU probably has the hardest of those teams at the top. Because I look at, Iowa, respectfully, I'd say that's the only thing that you should win. The other ones are total toss-ups at best. Versus you look at, like, Michigan has a couple of those, has, I believe, let me try and look here real quick. They have Nebraska. It's on the road, but, I don't respect Nebraska as much as some others. And then they have Rutgers at home. So you look at 2 games where you say they should handle business and win. I think Purdue has 2 of those games. Yeah, Indiana and Rutgers, where it should be, a win for them. Michigan State, you have said the 1. And otherwise, you're talking about obviously ranked teams, the other 5 games. So I think they do have the hardest path here in the last little stretch, just to put that into perspective.
Yeah, not to be like peeking around other people's schedules here, but like Michigan is fascinating, especially when you look at the computers, because it's obviously Michigan State, Nebraska, Rutgers, Illinois, Maryland, and then Michigan State again. So 6 games left. 5 of those games, like, it is a 4-point spread projected by the computers or less. So who knows? Because Michigan, unfortunately, has been incredible at winning these close one-possession games.
Yeah, that's their environment. They're good there. They don't mind that.
It's insane. Like, what's the stat? It's like they are 6-1 over the last 7 games, but they have a minus point differential. Like, they got the doors absolutely blown off them against Purdue, but ever since they've won a bunch of one-possession games, like, I can't even, like, be snarky or, salty about it. Like, that's just biting the floor, gritting your teeth and eating the thing you want to use. You have to.
I know. And like you said, they're not, like, the guard play is not their strength, and that's what you, to me at least, would equate. Like, they're good late in games. They must have excellent guard play taking care of them at the end.
Of course,
and
right.
It just doesn't add up. But they're very good there. They're very comfortable. So you get them in a late game situation, you can't expect them to flinch. So that's definitely something to watch as we move forward. Yeah.
Speaking of guard play, Jeremy Fears. It's been fun the last 2 games. It's actually been fun the whole season. I feel like there's an elephant in the room that's marching around here, though, and it is Jeremy Fears. And it's not lost with me that his struggles, I guess we use air quotes around, have started immediately after we came out with an episode talking about how elite he has been so far this season. Now, a lot of that was, numbers, stats, things you can't argue against. It was largely centered around his assist-to-turnover ratio, how it's the best in recent history, not just for Spartans, but in Big Ten play, especially for underclassmen. But in the last 7 games, 9 of 30 shooting. Okay, he's just made 2 threes on 9 attempts. His assist-to-turnover ratio is fine in this stretch, but he does have 2 4-turnover games in the last 7. We just saw him get benched down the stretch against Illinois, and that game was close, kind of because of him, I hate to say it. So look, Izzo kind of addressed it before this Purdue game, said that, you know what, let's all remember he's still young in his career. This is his first real true Big Ten stretch, because obviously he missed the bulk of it last year. What do you do with Jeremy Fears? Because I can't just have another version of Tum Tum. I don't know why I'm clapping. I can't have another version of Tum Tum running this offense down the stretch here as we're getting into March. And boy, howdy, is that what other defenses are treating him like. They are daring this young man to shoot. And when he does, it ain't going in. I don't know what question to even ask, but just take it away from here, because the concerns about him, I think, are starting to become legitimate now.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a rough patch. I guess you could consider it his freshman wall, because he is still sort of a freshman.
I like that. Yeah.
There's some of that. I mean, but he's played a ton of basketball at this point too. So it's late in the season to be hitting that. I mean, I think the most jarring thing is like you said, it's really hit home lately how defenses have sagged off, like, even more, than lately. It was never, a guy that you had to close out on with max effort or anything, but it's been even more noticeable lately. it's really reminded me back to like the recruiting process. Like I remember as his junior year, talking with our rankings and evaluation people on the basketball side and everything, and MSU was obviously involved, and they were just like, we don't know if he's a bad offensive player, but we just don't know. Like he's not shooting to show us what type of offensive player he is. So, excuse me, say that to say he's just always been inclined to not be a high volume shooter, even a medium volume shooter or scoring guy of that type. Now I did see him, for whatever it's worth at the Moneyball league this summer, scoring from all three levels, and that's what you do there. You show out and you do all that. But I do think he's capable of some of that. But yeah, there's got to be a willingness. I think sometimes he's almost like too role like cognizant, like too specific. He's like, I'm the distributor. I'm trying to get 8 assists tonight. That's what I'm going to do, and everything else is secondary. And but, it's interesting though, because I thought like about middle of the season, I thought he had a good knack for like when to take his own shot and when to drive.
Yeah,
10 minutes into the game for his first shot, and then he would just drive to the bucket and be like, "Oh, that's exactly what they kind of needed right now." 2 or 3 bad possessions in a row, and he would just settle them down, get to the bucket or whatever, get a jumper or like. But I thought he had a really good knack for timing of when to call his own number, and that's kind of gone away. And look, I think there's confidence issues. Offensively, with his jumper and where it's going, and that stuff can affect you mentally. When you sort of see the disrespect right in front of you, I think. So I think there's all of that. Lately I have been noticing more, and maybe it's just because the competition's been better. You are talking about Yakuchonis and Braden Smith the last 2 games, but I do think when I notice is like the first step. I think when people talk about is he the same guy or is he all the way back from the shooting and all that. I think that where you see it is the first step isn't quite what it used to be, and the lateral quickness, and those are the 2 areas where I really see it the most. I see you twice here, by the way. Sorry for interrupt. There you go. Little multiverse situation there. Okay.
My bad.
Sorry, I should have just kept talking. But yeah, so you start to see some of that, and that all plays into it too. I think it's not easy to get into the lane, and I don't think he's defending as well, as he could, pre peak form, before the shoot and everything. So that's where I see it, is a little bit of lesser first step. I think a little bit of lateral quickness, but I don't think he's like severely diminished from who he was. I don't think that's a big.
Okay.
I don't think he uses it. I don't think it is a crutch for him necessarily, but those are just areas that I notice of where he's a little less sharp lately.
And like just kind of caught in the middle of how to even just talk about it, because obviously he had that insane situation that happened to him last year. You have to be incredibly sympathetic of that. And yes, like this is considered his freshman year, if you will. But at the same time, like when we're in crunch time, it's the end of the season. Like we need our starting point guard to just be a little more than a ball distributor and someone that we can actually rely on here late in the game. Of course, you do have Trey Holloman. Now, he has been the saving grace here. Like that, Trey has been awesome as of late, especially, when he rises on
here. Yeah, I bet he'd be their MVP. You just, in terms of heavy emphasis on the V, like valuable player, like not their best or this or that, but like I said that to, I'm for sure I maybe said it here. I was saying that a lot in the preseason. Like I think Trey is going to be extremely invaluable for all the different things he can bring, and we've seen that.
Yeah.
And he's played well, and continuing to bring all those things. But I do think that they need Fierce to figure it out and step forward. I don't think it's something that like they can just smooth it over and get to where they want to get to with him sort of in this rut. He needs to emerge, and they need to figure that out because the toughness factor, that's him. He brings that. He gives them an edge in the way nobody else does. I think he cares. He gets them organized. His IQ is very high. So there's a lot of things that are super important that he brings. But number one on that list still to me will be the toughness, that edge, that dog mentality, that type of thing. That starts with him. So obviously he's got to clean up these other things and tighten up a lot, with what he's doing with the ball and everything. But like I said, it's not something that's like, well, we can get by. We can just sort of Band-Aid this up. Like, no, he's going to have to figure it out for them to go places.
Just to end on a high note with Jeremy Fierce too, just so like I'm not coming off as, he's just completely unplayable. Like, no, his defense has not lacked at all. Like that's still pretty nasty, especially for, again, how young in his career that he is. And that goes with everyone around the perimeter. So just to bring it full circle there with the defensive talk. Speaking of defense, let's switch sports right now, Steven. Let's go to the football field. We've talked a lot this offseason about how this team has gotten better on paper. More so for the offensive side of the ball. You've seen the growth with the offensive linemen. They're adding experience. They have depth, wide receivers. We don't have to rehash all of that right now because, well, there's still plenty of offseason to do all that, and we will right here on Locked On Spartans. But the defensive side of the ball, specifically in the trenches, yeah, Grady Kelly. It's pretty cool. They got David Santiago. Pretty neat. They got Nalu Lafayette from Wisconsin. I might be missing a guy or two. Is it enough, though, in the front seven? Is this like the biggest storyline as we eventually get into spring football here next month? Is that maybe just another piece or two out of the spring portal? But I'm optimistic overall in the offseason. Where I kind of go back and forth is just this front. I'm not sure how much better they got. Might be in a Debbie Downer, or you kind of matching me here.
No, I'm with you. I think this is a different discussion, but just across the board, somebody asked me like my thoughts on the class. I was like, I think it's solid, but it doesn't like move the needle for me in terms of the big picture of this season. You know, I still look at them as sort of a 500 team. I don't think they did enough where it's like, oh yeah, they're gonna take a step up or two on the ladder this year. And so that goes to the defensive side too. Defensively, Kelly to me looks like a guy that could maybe be your Maverick Hansen, where he's like, right, capable of starting, but probably better as like your third guy. Giving you a lot of snaps, of course, but you'd probably like to have somebody a little higher in front of him. And then, like, did they bring in anybody that's as good on the edge as Chris Bogle? And I don't think Chris Bogle had a lights out year by any stretch, So that's where it's concerning too. Like that, we all know what happened with the pressures and the sack streak drought, I guess is the right word. Yeah. So did you fix that? Did you fix the edge pressure? I don't know. Santiago's interesting, coming from a lower level at Air Force. Did some things, younger guy. Like I look at a lot of the defensive transfers, and I think I look at a lot of those guys as like stash players almost. Okay. Whereas a lot of guys last year had to come in and play right away. Nakai Martinez, Jordan Turner, Daquan Dowse, on and on and on. The corners, Ed Woods, and everybody else. They got like a lot of those guys had to come in and be first stringers right away. I look at a lot of these guys, and I could be proven wrong, but they're younger. Some of them haven't played at all, like Lafayette from Wisconsin that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. I think they're more like stash guys where you might hope for 2026 and beyond. And that's where I do think the staff's done a good job of sort of padding that middle section of the roster. I think they've got some intriguing guys, some depth guys. I just don't know how many are going to be instant impact guys right now. I wonder about the same thing. I would have liked to see a guy that's a surefire starting quality D tackle right away. That's a surefire D end that's going to walk in and start for you and could ideally get you at least like 5 sacks, something like that. I don't see that guy. Maybe he's in there, but I don't see it on the surface. So that's concerning. Let me see here. Joshua Eaton, the corner from Texas State. I think he was at Auburn maybe originally, or maybe it was Oklahoma. He was at a big-time school originally. He's a guy that's kind of interesting to me. He's got some length to him. Seems like he's got some physicality to him. And then the other corner they got from Eastern Illinois is actually a guy that I've heard behind the scenes that people are excited about, Najee Burt. So maybe there's diamonds in the rough here that we're not aware of. But, yeah, on paper, I don't think, like you said, especially that front seven, because you lost so much production at the linebacker level too. And Moa, who came in from BYU, I think is interesting, has played a little bit. So that's probably an option there. But I thought, and there's other guys that they brought in last year that we didn't really see, like Bridgman from Michigan and Pulliam from Miami. Maybe, those were kind of stash guys a year ago. Maybe it's time to pull them out. But no, I don't think you're off base at all with sort of wondering if there's still holes there.
Well, just like question marks. Like I'm not going to be defined enough to say like, oh, they're for sure not going to be good. But like I'm certainly not going to sit here being like, oh, it's guaranteed to work out. Do I like the route they've gone with the cornerbacks? Instead of taking guys that have lost their starting positions in the SEC and then bringing them up here. We saw that strategy many a time under Mel Tucker. Am I more open to the strategy of, okay, let's go to a lower level like a Texas State or a UConn or Eastern Illinois and try and, to kick the tires on those guys? Sure. Give me something different, but like it's not guaranteed going to work. In case anyone was going to lose sleep on the Joshua Eaton thing, it was Oklahoma. I just looked that up in the background because I forgot as well. Sure. But what defensive player out of the transfer portal like interests you the most? Like, because you mentioned stash guys, you're not entirely sure who's going to start. Which one are you like completely in the dark on right here? Because for me, It is Lafayette out of Wisconsin. It's weird because he left high school as a 4-star. He didn't get a single snap at Wisconsin. I'm talking to the Locked On Badgers guy, and he says he only heard good things out of him, out of Wisconsin. Well, then why the hell didn't he play at Wisconsin? Like, that's one where I want to have high hopes. I'm hearing a lot of good things. Why 0 snaps, though, last year for a Wisconsin team that, I don't know if you missed it, didn't necessarily go to the college football playoff last year. So that's the one that I'm going to have like an arched eyebrow over the entire offseason, I think. Sure.
No, he's very intriguing. You know, you say intriguing, mm-hmm. He's like top of the list because there is some unknown there. I don't remember. I thought he got hurt maybe like early in camp or something, and like that put him back. But I might be wrong about that, so I don't want to say too much. But yeah, I thought I remember when he committed looking into that, and there was like some sort of reason why he didn't play at all. But you know, that's a total wild card. Like, yeah, we sit here right now, guys got 0 snaps. So what are we supposed to make of that? You could play 0 snaps again this year. He could come out of nowhere and be their sack leader or something. You know, I don't know. The one thing though is like, yeah, on paper, I'm not like, I think it's a fine class. I don't think it's a bad class. I don't think it's a great class. Okay. I think it's fine. And like I said, it kind of keeps them, you know, I think it still keeps them competitive. They could have gone the other way. But I think it makes them about the type of team they were last year, which, you know, they finished 5-7. We all know they could have been 6-6 or 7-5 under very minor different circumstances. Yeah. So I still look at them as that type of team, 5, 6, 7 wins. So, you know, you didn't reverse, but you didn't really gain ground either. But I could be wrong. The one thing is, I think that's just important to say is these guys did this staff, I thought, sort of overperformed in the portal last year. Like, I didn't think Jordan Turner would come in and be arguably their best defensive player. I didn't know, you know, if he'd play over the guys they already had. Daquan Dowse, again, you know, was just like an okay player coming in, had some snaps to him at least, but turned out to be their best D tackle. So there's a handful of examples, you know, where I thought they overperformed last year, and we're in the same position now where it's like, you know, a lot of these guys don't move the needle, and then you go into the season and you're like, oh, these guys are all over the 2 deep and contributing in a pretty big way. So they did really well in their hit rate last year is really what I'm trying to say. And so at this point, I guess you kind of have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they have good eyes. They know what they're doing in the evaluation part and the fit part and all that. And there's going to be more hits than maybe we anticipate right now. I think that's the positive spin on it, I guess, if that's what you're looking for.
I'm so excited for spring football to start just so we get at least start hearing whispers out of practice, you know, start to get a better idea, because I hate being like this, like so indecisive about an entire side of the ball. You know, being like a talking head, I'm supposed to be defiant and confident in my takes, but like, I don't know. We just lost our best 2 corners last year. The front could not get a pass rush against children to save their lives. How am I supposed to just automatically say like, yeah, it got better for sure? I truly don't know. There's so many transfers coming in. There's so many stash players, like you mentioned, from last year, like your Bridgmans, like your Pulliams, that there's so many unknowns. I just want answers, Steven, and I'm supposed to give people answers, and here I am just looking like a stooge being like, I don't know, guys. It could be good. It could also not be. Stay tuned. But the offensive side of the ball, I'm pretty confident, should take a step forward. And if they don't, well, that's going to be a lot of angry discussions here on this show, because they have really no excuse not to at least be average offensively in the Big Ten next year. But the defense, I don't know, bro. It could be good. Could also not.
Could. I mean, and that's the other thing that's sort of a little frustrating. Like, spring ball even isn't going to provide that many answers now, to be honest, because whatever they roll out as their 2 deep, you know, in practice 15, let's say, I mean, like, it's not crazy to say like 8 of those guys could be gone, you know, the next week or something. Like, so whatever answers you think you might get or solutions might come about in spring, it's all kind of temporary because the roster could change in a big way, whether it's departures or just the guys who aren't here yet. Either way, so it's not as you know, even that, and I, you know me, like I look forward to it. I like spring ball because,
of course,
it scratches that itch and everything, and I'm always itching for football. So, but yeah, there's not even as many concrete things where it's like, all right, that guy kind of won that job in spring, carry it over to fall, and that's a development that you can trace back to that. There's fewer tentacles and lines, you know, connective tissue there, I think, between the spring and the fall now because of just the turnover in the state of rosters.
Well, luckily here at Michigan State, we never have to worry about departures in the spring, so you can just go ahead and not lose any sleep over that. There's one thing going for us. It is roster stability in the spring. We only add here in East Lansing. At least
Hey, they've done a good job. I'm not necessarily. I'm just reminding people of the state of the world. I'm sure I don't need to, I guess.
Yeah.
But, I'm not insinuating that this or that guy is going to go, or this or that. I'm saying these things happen, but at the same time, tip your cap. Michigan State did a good job, I think, quietly in a lot of cases, taking care of some of that stuff. I mean, there were far fewer portal entries than I anticipated coming out that season. And I know for a fact that a good chunk of guys that people would have been unhappy to see in the portal didn't go in the portal because they were taken care of on the back end,
Gotcha.
I guess on the front end, you'd say. So I think there should be some confidence in that realm too, that if it comes down to that MSU can be competitive. Not that they couldn't before necessarily, but that was a different situation with the first year staff and whatnot, and those exact scenarios specifically were a little unique. So yeah, I just wanted to say that they have done some good work to keep guys around and even having that conversation.
Ending things on a high note. That's what we do here on Locked On Spartans, especially when Stephen Brooks joins the mix. Folks, all you beautiful viewers, all the listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode. We will be back tomorrow breaking down this Michigan State basketball game. We're going to drag in Greg Waddell, Sleepers Media. That's right, that Michigan fan over there. No, it's always a great time with Greg. Can't wait for that chat. Until then, though, guys, hey.
Wait. Not until then. Before I go, I don't know when I'm coming back on.
Oh, no.
How are they doing? 2 Michigan games. I won't even say the Big Ten, but 2 Michigan games. How are these going to go?
I think we split. I think the home team wins each game.
That's where I'm at.
I'm going to edit that out. I want to be positive, so I'm going to edit that answer out. But, now that I'm hooked up to a polygraph, I have to give you my honest answer. I think we split. Split against Michigan, beat Wisconsin, beat Maryland. We're feeling hot about ourselves. Most ridiculous road loss to Iowa you've ever imagined, and then we beat Michigan at home. And that's how we finish out this season. That's
so then Michigan needs to lose to somebody else, right? You need a little help probably.
Michigan will help. Yeah, they will lose 2 other times as well, but then Wisconsin will take care of business, and then all of a sudden it's the team that no one talked about the entire season, Wisconsin, winning the Big Ten, and that's how this unfolds. You like that?
Yeah, nice nugget at the end to keep this in for people. Appreciate that. I had to ask. I had to get on record to see where you were at.
No, I like when the flip to a script and I'm the one getting asked the questions here. So it's not like an answer I am joyous to give, but it's what I feel. So I would love to be wrong. I would love for that to be a 2-0 Michigan State sweep, but hey, we'll see. Could happen. It's a good team. They play good defense. All right, guys. Until next time. Oh God, I'm already starting to get scared about Friday. I can feel it in my heart right now. Love you all. Go Green.